Well, in the state of North Carolina, any property that any married couple purchases during the marriage that is still there at the time that the parties separated is marital property, okay? And marital property is subject to equitable distribution, which means it's subject to be divided equally. Well, when parties separate and they ask the court to intervene to actually decide which property goes where, what the court or some of the factors that the court will consider is number one, the contribution by the spouse to that property during the marriage, the duration of the marriage, the income and liability that's associated with each spouse as far as the property is concerned, as well as the consequences or the tax consequences of awarding the property to an individual. I'll give you an example. If an individual brings into the marriage, say $100,000, and they pay that on the marital home, and they buy this home, say at $200,000, one spouse brought in $100,000 that they put down. Well, when the parties actually separate, just generally, when the parties separate, that $100,000 was really separate property that would belong to the spouse or would be accounted for that spouse that brought it in. It doesn't mean that because they paid down $100 and it was separate property, that is subject to be divided also. So the court will definitely, number one, they'll define what is marital property. Number two, they'll define what is separate property. And there's also this thing, what we call mixed property. For example, it came in as separate property, but now it's mixed property because that money that they brought in is now commingled with other funds or stocks and bonds that may have been purchased during the marriage. So at the time that you separate, the court's going to look at, number one of the things is the duration of the marriage, the contribution, by each spouse to the property that is actually involved, the income and the expenses that are associated with that party, in particular. And one of the last things, of course, is, the consequences of dividing up the property to that person. Example, if they award an individual the house, what are they going to be able to, maintain that house? Would the other individual or the other spouse be in a better position to actually care and maintain that house? They'll also look at factors as one of the factors is, whether there's children involved, because if it's a child custody action, child support action, one of the things that'll be considered if one parent is looking to maintain custody, they'll take that into account also as to how they're going to actually divide up or who they may award the marital home to. So it's a few factors. It's not just a situation whereby they just look at the property, they divide it down the middle, and they give each person the value of it. There are quite a few factors that you would have to consider, or the court would have to consider when they're dividing up property when individuals separate.